Welcome to this week's chapter on nutrient cycles and soil fertility. So, the first section in your in this chapter, section 12.1 on nitrogen in the soil system, it's first because nitrogen is the most important nutrient that plants need in order to grow. So that's why it's the first one that we study and the one we study the most because of that. So the first big thing to understand with nitrogen is that it's not a straightforward process of just adding material to the soil and then the plants just taking up that material, or adding chemicals to the soil and the plants just taking up those chemicals. So we have this concept of the nitrogen cycle, and on page 398, figure 12.1, just know that what I'm about to draw for you is all located in that figure, but that figure is very very complicated. So I want to draw just a really simplified version of that figure so that we're all on the same page. Sorry about that. And then we can go take a look at that actual figure. So if we take if we were to draw a plant and the plant roots here, this graph centers around the plant and how the plant actually takes up nitrogen. So we can start with a process like adding manure. It'd be kind of smelly there. We'll add manure, and we'll just say OM, organic matter. We'll add manure to the soil. When that material hits the soil, and then when it is incorporated into the soil, this can also be. You can also think about this as fertilizers that we're adding to the soil as well. So when you see that, just know that this is the process that all chemicals must go through in order to get taken up by the plant. Now, some chemicals we apply, we kind of inject them into a particular point in this nitrogen cycle, so we don't have to go through some of the other points, but they are affected by things that happen on this cycle. So when we add this organic material, whatever it is, manure or whatever, the first thing that happens, is what we call mineralization. In your book, we'll talk about mineralization. In fact, the next section on the page opposite of figure 12.1, so page 399, it discusses mineralization in a little more detail. So mineralization, okay, that's what that says. In some texts, we also call this ammonification. Okay, ammonification. And at this point, what happens is we go from whatever form the nitrogen was in this organic material into this form here. NH4+. Okay, that is ammonium. Okay, ammonium. That's one of the two forms that plants are able to take up directly as a cation from the soil, or as an ion from the soil. This is the cationic form, the positively charged form of nitrogen. So that's kind of the first stop. The next stop is this form, NO2-. Okay, we call this nitrate. Nitrate. Now, nitrate isn't taken up by plants. It's an intermediate form, and this process that we're traveling along now is called nitrification. Nitrification. Okay, nitrification. Now, nitrification is going to extend from going from ammonium to nitrite, and then we're going to go on one step further here, and we're going to go to nitrate, NO3 minus. Okay, nitrate. Okay. Now, nitrate is one of the other forms that is directly able to be taken up by plants. Okay, so this process here, call it plant uptake. Plant uptake. Okay, so we've got plants that are able to use either ammonium or nitrate as a source of nitrogen. You'll notice that since both nitrate and nitrite are negatively charged, what does that mean for their ability to hang around in the soil or be attracted to our clays, especially, or our organic matter? Do you think these will stick onto the soil? Remember the cation exchange demonstration that we had with the batteries, and when we had the negatively charged terminal, that negatively charged terminal opposed the soil, okay, or repelled the soil away from it. The same thing happens for nitrite and nitrate. They do not attach to the soil surfaces unless there's a significant amount of the soil that's anionically charged not anionically charged. The significant part of the soil that's positively charged, okay, that can hold anions. So because our soil typically has a negative charge to it, a cation exchange capacity, these aren't cations, these are anions. So they're going to be repelled away from the soil. We call this repelling, and then movement down through the soil and out of the soil, we call that leaching. Okay. So leaching is the movement of any material, but in this case, nitrate and nitrate through that soil by virtue of water moving down through the soil, and the nitrate and nitrite not being held by the soil particles. Okay, so we're on the downward side of this. When we have nitrate over here on the left-hand side, we can have soil conditions that actually convert that nitrate into nitrogen gas, into gas. Okay, so that's just a gaseous form of nitrogen. This process typically happens. This process here happens in an anaerobic type of a situation, so a waterlogged situation, a situation with low oxygen availability. That's when that typically happens. This process is what we call, turn it this way, denitrification. Okay, denitrification. So we had nitrification over here, and now we have denitrification, moving away from the nitrate form. Later on, when we talk about fertilizers, you're gonna see that we have different types of fertilizers that are able to actually, when we place those fertilizers on the soil, go into these particular pools here, or they are a form of fertilizer. They are a nitrate form of fertilizer. So instead of going through this whole process here, they go directly into this pool of nitrate that becomes available for plants. One of the largest ways that we add nitrogen to the soil is through ammonia, so that's NH3 as a gas, and we inject this gas into the soil, and it very rapidly becomes ammonium, which can be taken up or go through these processes and be taken up through as a nitrate form. But this is a really simplified version of the nitrogen cycle. So now that you've got this one, you sort of understand what's going on with this one. Let me make just a couple more notes. there are places in here that are really distinctly relying on soil microbes to make the process, make that process really happen. The first one, and the first one, it really isn't part of the process. The first one is moving this this nitrogen gas into the roots of legume plants. Now I've drawn a grass here, but you can think about this as a legume plant, like soybeans, for instance. And this process is called nitrogen fixation. Okay, nitrogen fixation. And this process is, it can happen on the surface of legume plants that have nodules on their surface, which are a relationship, a symbiotic relationship with a bacteria. You'll read about it later on in this chapter, that are able to actually breathe in this nitrogen gas and create usable nitrogen by the plant. In return, they get food from the plant. So it's a symbiotic relationship, symbiotic nitrogen fixation. That's in association with the plant. But we also have some bacteria that are free living in the soil that can do this same sort of thing. That can breathe in, basically breathe in nitrogen air, fixed nitrogen air, and make it into a form that's available to plants. That's free living, what we call free living nitrogen fixation. The microbes that are responsible for this process right here, this section right here, okay, doesn't happen without a little bacteria called Nitro Simonis. Okay, Nitro Simonis. They're responsible for that transformation of ammonium into nitrite. Okay, the next one over here. This process right here, we have a microbe called Nitro Bacter. Nitro Bacter. That's responsible for taking nitrite and converting it into nitrate. These species that are responsible for this, one of the main species that's responsible for this is called Rhizobium. Rhizobium. Okay. And rhizo, strangely, awesomely enough, it corresponds to the rhizosphere, the sphere of the plant root. So that's where we get that name. The processes, these two processes that Nitrosimonas and Nitro Bacter instigate require there to be oxygen in the system, so an aerobic type system. This over here that we mentioned does not require oxygen, or actually thrives under an anaerobic type process. And I've made a mistake here. Rhizobium is actually the species of bacteria that's in association with plant roots. The species that carries this out are named Clostridium and Azotobacter. Those two species carry out the free. They're just kind of hanging out in the soil, and they're breathing in and nitrogen and making it into a form available for plants. So this is, again, a simpler breakdown of the nitrogen cycle. It doesn't look so simple now that you're looking at it, but you can now go to figure 12.1 as you're reading through the section on nitrogen. You have an idea of where some of these things are fitting in. So hopefully this is helpful to you.